With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
One final dance for LMP3s and GT4s this season as the first finale of 2025 in the PRL sees the LMP3 GT4 Challenge waltz into Road America. Let's see who's going to be picking up the first titles in finals week, which starts now. Delighted to have your company on RaceSpotTV. There's going to be 5 evenings worth of fantastic racing action with champions crowned over the course of this week. But it's great to see these LMP3 drivers and the GT4 drivers get their chance to show what they can do first on your Monday night PRL action. Delighted to have your company on RaceSpotTV. My name is Darren Thacker, as always, joined by Ron Morns, as always. Up here in the commentary box, we've got Hugo East behind the cameras, making the broadcast look absolutely wonderful for us tonight. Ron, we've got a lot to talk about in terms of the championship picture, but coming into this race, I think there's going to be a lot of drivers who feel like they can at least gain something tonight.
Yeah, try and gain something around this absolute gem of a racetrack, the National Park of Speed, Road America. This 14-turn, nearly 4+ mile long road course is an absolutely marvelous ride in the world of motorsports. A current host of the Sports Car Club of America National Championship runoffs every single year. Going to be hosting that for 2026 as well. But here, playing the host of the final race of this season, it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a treacherous as well. We heard from some of these drivers that we may have rain in the picture come time for this race coming up, and just based off the skies right now, it's going to be rather ominous with a lot of pressure for drivers up and down the grid.
Yeah, and you know, coming into this race, you'd say that a couple of these drivers' championships are probably over, but they're still alive in terms of the fact that no one has got that 57-point gap that they need. Alan Brockway leads the championship in the LMP3s by very decent 42 points. Realistically, all he has to do tonight is finish the race, and he's the champion ahead of Edwin and Offra. He's fighting with Zach Hebert, though, over that P2 spot, 3 points between them coming into tonight. Carter James and David Stevenson, 4th and 5th. They're over that 300-point threshold with the likes of Morbin Carr, Quognien, Victor Couto, JP Alfonso and Eric Leroy all in a bit of a fist fight behind to try and get themselves over that threshold. In the teams, it looks like it's going to be quite an easy win in the championship from Meritus M Squad Oceana Coffee, albeit it's not over yet. 54 points is their advantage back to Echelon Simsport, but they've been good all season. I think they backed themselves, particularly with the Drivers' Champion in waiting, to keep this one for themselves. Igniter just ahead of the Meritus M Squad Ginger Liveries team, and those 4 teams have really run away from the rest. Satellite Racing and Tech Sport in a bit of a league of their own in 5th and 6th. Sartex MC, Selfrec Precision Racing, Hydra Race, Geodesic Racing and Impact Sim Sport are the top 10 teams in the LMP3 standings. Over in the GT4s, and I mean, this couldn't be more over if it tried to, although Aitno hasn't quite done it yet. 50 points is his advantage over Arnaud Jeunesse. Absolutely huge margin to build up over the course of 7 scoring races. Ken Copeland is going to be third, looking to get himself possibly towards the top 2, with Chris Mrecker and Christian Menes themselves trying to overtake Ken Copeland for that top 3 spot. Ayrton Williams, another driver in there, who is looking to get himself at least into the top 5. 5. Gabriel Gutierrez and Justin Bracken a little bit further back in 7th and 8th, with Jeremy Rogers and Kurt Ham tied on 263. What can they do to try and benefit themselves in the final race? Closest championship of the 4 is actually the GT4 team standings, with Satellite Racing leading the championship by just 30 points ahead of the wrong stuff. It could go either way tonight, but I think Satellite will have enough of a margin to feel that they're slightly more comfortable tonight. Middle of the pack Racing have moved forward from their usual P5 spot up into the top 3. They're going to be hoping to hold on to that from Unit X Valhalla, who have just sitting on that 500 point mark. Passion Sim Esports and Lewis R Esports Buttkicker are 5th and 6th, with Sartex MC, Hungry Hamsters chasing the Delta, and Echelon Simsport rounding out are 10 runners, or top 10 runners, I should say, in the GT4 teams. Now, before we get going to the racing action, it's fair to say we've got to thank the sponsors who've been so supporting over such a long time for us in the PRL, making these broadcasts possible on RaceSpotTV. We've got to start with Logitech G. Logitech G wheels and pedals are equipped with true force feedback to help you feel the road and own the race. Use code Precision5 at checkout on logitechg.com for 5% off of your purchase. Advanced Sim Racing, owned and operated by passionate sim racers. Advanced Sim Racing designs and builds the sturdiest and most durable aluminium profile racing simulation cockpits available in the market today. All PRL members also get a 5% discount on ASR products using the Precision5 coupon code. Racebox offers mid and high-end button boxes for sim racing enthusiasts, from the casual gamer up to the most meticulous sim racing driver. Competitively priced and carefully handcrafted, our button boxes are an enjoyable addition to any sim racing setup. Visit raceboxsimracing.com and get a 5% discount using the Precision5 coupon code. Buttkicker products add incredible immersion and realism to every single game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself into the driver's seat with Buttkicker. Moradness is a performance lifestyle brand motivated by motorsport and founded by professional race car driver Daniel Morad. It's Head-Eye Racing Photography. Capture your finest, proudest, or simply worst moments in your hobby in up to 8K resolution. It is, of course, a great addition to any sim room. And Advanced Motorsports. Get ready to learn to be fast with Advanced Motorsports. Follow them on all of their socials to become a better driver. And we thank all of their sponsors, some of whom have been with us for many seasons now. Really do provide fantastic support, and we thank them for that. Qualifying is go, though, here in Road America. And it's fair to say that at this point in the championship, with this being the final qualifying session, you kind of want a good lap time on the board right now. Show what you can do, Aaron.
Yeah, flex your muscles as it stands at the moment in this qualifying session. Get some good times on the board. I gotta say one thing, talking about this racetrack, it is so rewarding when you get it right. You gotta say, this racetrack, despite the fact it looks on paper like it may be easy, you got some really tough corners around this racetrack. This is certainly one of them. The 9 and 10 section of the carousel. In these LMP3s, you're right on the ragged edge of control, trying to use as much downforce as you can to carry a boatload of speed out of that corner and don't end up in the grass or gravel. Another challenging section, the kink. That is a section where if we see some side-by-side racing, we may end up having to pour our drinks out as a result of it. That is a section where if it doesn't go well for you, it's going to go desperately wrong. There is a list of drivers who have gone for some pretty wild rides coming out of that section, but Road America is still an absolutely wonderful circuit. Super rewarding when you get it right as well. These drivers looking to get it as right as they possibly can in this qualifying session. Brockway on that start finish straight away, about to cross the line. Let's see if it's another pole for Brockway in the number 42.
Yeah, champion in waiting, I think it's fair to call him. He's been dominant this season. He's not been making the mistakes that others have been making. Go to the top of the timesheets with a 58.4 provisionally, at least top of the timesheets. Really shows what kind of market he is going to be able to set tonight. Teammate in the form of Eric Leroy doing a good job in the 444 as well. Let's see if he can get enough points for him and the team to get them over that line to win the team's championship as well. Garrett Mayne's got pole on the opening race of the season. Going to get pole on the final race of the season in that number 12 in the GT4 class. Champion in waiting, Aiden Young, just in behind him for the time being. But times are looking like they're going to be pretty close in this section, despite it being one of the longest circuits we've been to this season.
Yeah, this track is a behemoth. It feels old school, and that's because it is old school. Road America is just about completely unaltered from how the track was when it was first constructed many, many moons ago. Still a wonderful track regardless, as we're about 4.5 minutes away from the end of this qualifying session. I want to raise a point talking about Adam Brockway. I kind of sold it a little bit inaccurately a couple of moments ago as we saw him go on to that start-finish straight away. I mentioned that I said that Brockway is going to grab yet another pole. It wouldn't be his first pole from this season. However, he hasn't really grabbed a boatload of poles. Looking through, the only pole that he has thus far actually came 1 week ago at the Nürburgring. Before then, he had been poleless, which is quite impressive considering he's had so many wins thus far this season, is essentially the champion-elect as it stands currently. Brockway not really flexing his muscles off in qualifying by me at this point. Nothing would end this season better than coming out here at Road America. I nearly said Road Atlanta. We'll probably have that screw up happen for me between now and the end of this show. We've both been there and done that, I think. I may be speaking for my own, but Brockway, something that would be fantastic for him to do to bring the season to a close would be to come out here to Road America and just put on a stonking performance, grab the pole, grab the win, and just cap off a season of true domination from him. However, Eric Leroy just jumped in front of him a couple of moments ago.
Yeah, but I think if Adam's going to lose pole to anybody, he wouldn't mind losing it to his teammate. I think that's the one place he wouldn't mind it going. And on your point about, miscalling this track, before we started the broadcast, of course none of you will know, but I was sitting here writing down Road America, Road America, Road America like it was lines to make sure that I wasn't going to get it wrong. And I may have, I think, double-crossed you, Ron, so I'll put a little bit of blame on myself for that one. As we watch Mike Gallant running towards kind of the corner. I think there's going to be a few drivers tonight who aren't necessarily in the fight for the championship, so theoretically we're not going to be necessarily focusing on, but there's some really, really good battles for good positions in the championship. The likes of P5 in the LMP3s, David Stevenson, Khan, Nian, Kuto, Alfonso, and Eric Leroy all come into this race with a good shot at that top 5. I know that not all of them are going to be here this evening, but we've got a decent turnout in terms of the LMP3s than what we've seen of late, and I think there's going to be quite a fist fight over some of those spots, and it could really come down to the final lap or two. So a lot at stake, and I think for Mobin Khan, particularly a driver who has, I think he would himself say that he's somewhat underperformed. 5 poles on the season. He's had, I'm looking at the wrong driver, he's had 4 poles on the season, looking for that 5th, but he's just not been able to convert them into race wins, and I think he's going to be thinking a lot about what ifs during this race, because he definitely could have been in the championship fight, but it's not just quite been there for him this season.
Yeah, he's had the speed, just hasn't really been able to convert that speedy performance in qualifying into a checkered flag in the race. It's been unfortunate. Khan's been very fast. He just has not been able to do it in the races. That's one thing. You see a lot of drivers in real life and in the sim as well. They put in great performances in qualifying sessions, and come time for the race, they can't really convert it over. So that's really been the story of Mobin Khan thus far this season. Stupidly fast, but being about as consistent as expired mayonnaise in the process is not going to equate a championship contending season, but he should still probably not hang his head too low. He certainly has the speed. Just fingers crossed in the future for the PRL, whenever the series does return, that Mobin Khan will be able to iron out that consistency or lack thereof and find himself really challenging for a championship.
Yeah, of course. I'm sure many of you are aware, but for those of you who don't know, it was announced at the back end of last week that the admins were going to take the PRL on a bit of a sabbatical after the end of this season, and they've done so much work. It's only really fair that they get a decent break. It does mean that for the time being, at least, we don't know for how long that's going to be. This is going to be the final LMP3 and GT4 race that we've seen the PRL for quite some time. So a little bit of prestige, I think, that's behind the drivers tonight in getting those poles, in getting those wins. It's not just about the championship, it's about that final race, and that could really be a bit of a poignant reminder to the drivers and could give them a little bit more to fight for over the course of the hour. Gabriel Gutierrez setting a time towards the end of the session, jumps up into P8, but it seems that with time expiring on the clock, that our 2 championship leaders look like they may be able to grab pole in this session. Timer hit 0. Cars have to reset back to pit lane. There's no way that you can finish a lap. The cars are on their own, so when the timer hits 0, it really does hit 0. And that means that that's the end of qualifying. Adam Brockway on pole in the LMP3s. It's Aiden Young on pole in the GT4s. And Ron, it's fair to say, the drivers that have shown their pace all season long are continuing to show it right at the end of the season.
Yeah, you look at those drivers at the front of both of the classes, and it's about as shocking as seeing a goldfish in a fish tank. That's exactly the way that I can describe it. Let's take a look at this pole lap from Adam Brockway. A second pole of the season, but ending the season off with 2 straight poles is certainly a good performance. Absolutely expertly driving through turn number 1. Now into turn number 3. Yes, that small little deviation in the road between those two is technically considered turn 2, as is this small little wiggle that we've got coming up here, heading down this straightaway. Technically speaking, it's 3A now, and we're coming up to turn number 4, but everyone focuses on the braking zone. Heading off into turn number 5, trying to pick your marker, run a little bit wide, run that esports line, as some would say, hit that apex as best as you can, and use all of the exit curb that is available to you under the bridge, up the hill into turn number 6. You can see I'm using all of the curbs available around this racetrack. Gotta say one thing as well about this track, the curbs a lot more forgiving here than you usually would see in some other racetracks. Is heading down into turn number 8 right now. Here's the lick the stamp and send it corner, the carousel, turn 9 into turn number 10. You can see him in 4th gear, having to balance that throttle too. Don't want to gun it heading through here. The cars just don't have the grip to be able to do that flat. However, it is still a balancing act. This corner's flat though. The King carry a boatload of speed through there, right towards the top of 5th, shifting into 6th now, heading down Kettle Bottoms into Canada Corner in a couple of moments time. A really good overtaking opportunity for these racers as well. Also a spot where some drama can ensue. Now at the top end of the circuit, heading down into turn 13 and 13A right about now. Real important to stay tight to that exit, otherwise you go for a wild ride in that access road and find yourself doing a little bit of a bunny hop. That's turn 14, the final corner. Get a great exit on there onto this massively long start finish straight away, and that will be Adam Brockway's second pole lap of this season.
A really tidy lap there from the LMP3 champion in waiting. Like I said, all he needs to do in this race is finish the race, and he'll be crowned champion. Same can be said for Aiden Young, and he's going to be starting from the front of the field in the GT4s. Though, mind you, last time he started from the pole position was a couple of weeks ago at the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, and he didn't even cross the start-finish line. He spun on, well, the penultimate corner, quite frankly, and let's hope that the same cannot happen tonight, even though there's always that risk hanging over him. It was the round he ended up dropping, 36 points he dropped, which means that he could have been even further ahead in the championship. By actual fact, he could have been an extra 19 points ahead. He could have had a 69-point gap if no points were dropped in the championship, but as it is, he's had to give back some of the points that he's earned over the course of the season, and he finds himself in a position where, although he has a sizable advantage, he just needs to finish. Mind you, even if he crashes the race, Arnaud Genet still needs to get a top 3 finish. Otherwise, Aiden Young will win the title anyway. So there's a lot of conditions in which will make this 4-2-7 drive for the champion. And the first half of the lap has been pretty tidy, a little bit more sedate than it is in the LMP3s, as you'd expect. And this part of the lap here, Ron, as you come around the carousel into the kink, that, difference in pace between the LMP3s and the GT4s is going to be plain to see. And when it comes to lapping cars, we could see quite a few difficulties at this part of the circuit.
Yeah, riding on board with Aiden Young for this pole lap and seeing how different the speed is between those two classes, it is completely night and day between how the GT4 cars are negotiating that carousel section versus how the LMP3 cars do it. I mean, I said in that small little lap guide I did as we were riding on board with Adam Brockway for his pole lap that those LMP3 cars are not going flat heading through the carousel, but seeing that GT4 car lumber its way through there, that's a little bit harsh. These GT4 cars still pretty dang awesome. Those LMP3 cars may as well have a rocket strapped to their butt, considering the pace differential between those two. That's another thing to raise in reference to this race coming up. The pace differential between the GT4s and the LMP3s going to be rather substantial for this round at Road America, so the prospect of a consistent, never-ending stream of lap traffic encounters is certainly going to be prevalent.
It is, and I think it's also worth noting, of course, Road America known for its longer straights, particularly compared to tracks we've had on the calendar this season, so it should be a little bit easier for teams and drivers to be able to work their way through a little bit cleaner, but we don't necessarily know. We're going to have to see how it comes in the next couple of minutes. Here's the grid, though, for the final race of the season, and it's almost no surprise to see Adam Brockway, champion in waiting, on pole position. It's the driver with the most pole positions this season in the form of Mobin Khan, who line up alongside of him. It's Brockway's teammate Leroy who's behind him, so a nice front three. We'll see how they can work off of the start. Miguel Vigo and Zach Hebert 4th and 5th. Hebert fresh off his win just 2 weeks ago. His first win in the PRL will start 5th, and Edwin and Offra looking to hold on to P2 in the championship goes from the back of row 3. Connor James and Victor Couto make up row number 4 as they look to end their championship on a high, with Faizan Sheikh and Kwok Yin going to be inside the top 10 to start. David Stevenson and Chad Nobles 11th and 12th, with just a couple more to come. JP Alfonso and Chris Massey will be lined up on the 7th and final row. In the GT4s, it's a similar story in terms of the championship leader having the pole position. It's Aidan Young at the front of the field, but you can see the difference in lap time, about 16 seconds, which means that we're likely to see about 2 to 3 times that the leaders will be lapped in the race. Garrett Maidenett and Williams 2nd and 3rd. They've been competitive all season. As has Christian Menes. You know, those top 4 likely to fight together at the front of the field. Christian Menes had the chance to win last week. Didn't quite materialise for him. Let's see if he can try. He can himself to the front tonight. Michael Brooks and Christian Recker are on row number 3. We look further back to Ken Copeland and Gabriel Gutierrez on row 4. Gutierrez already a second off the pole lap, with Caelan Tobin and Mike Gallant just about keeping himself inside the top 10. Joseph Maley and Robert Schwenkler find themselves on row number 6, but they're right in the middle of the pack, with the likes of Justin Bracken and Kurt Ham in 13th and 14th. Justin Welch and Travis Pruitt making up row 7, with row 8 with Welch and Pruitt, with row 9 consisting of the next 2 of Faroni and Rosenberger. Matthew Wyckoff, the final car to line up on the grid. 33 here with us this evening for the final race in the championship, and boy, aren't we lucky. I think we have a full formation lap to enjoy with all of the cars, which means we've got more than enough time to tee this one up, Ron.
Yeah, I think by the time we'll be able to get this race up and running, we may I think, Dara, honestly, we could probably put our brain power together and crack the Da Vinci Code, because this is going to be a very long formation lap. We're going to be here for a little while, and I will note, as we are on this formation lap, still rather foggy around here. It looks like we're doing this race from a very cloudy hillside instead of anything else. Reminds me of my karting days when I used to race up in the Poconos, and for the mornings up there in the Poconos, low cloud level, you wouldn't be able to see about 5 feet in front of the car. It was so foggy, and you can see the headlights on these cars on as well. So I'm curious how these slightly gloomy conditions are going to affect these drivers. Track conditions probably going to be a bit slippery. The relative humidity probably going to be super high as well. But I think just the general mindset of seeing gray everywhere around here may affect these drivers a teeny tiny bit.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that as well. It's not the easiest of conditions for drivers to be fighting over championships in, you know. More clouded over than I think drivers would expect. I think it's also worth noting that the GT4s may have to get a little bit of a move on. They're a little bit further back on the LMP3s, but they have enough time to catch up, I'm sure. While we're on this formation lap, worth saying welcome to everybody who's watching along on the RaceSpotTV YouTube channel. Great to see a few of you in the chat already. Matt's vibing, great to see that. Brendan, Ewan as well, really good to see so many of you getting involved. And I think there's a Miguel Vigo fan in the chat, if I'm reading into that correctly. But it's always great to see so many of you on a Monday night. We really have loved your chat, particularly on our Monday night PRL. I know I've been here for quite a few months now to kick off the week, and it's been great to see you guys in time and time again. But at least for the time being, we're on our last Monday night. I think a lot of these drivers who've been around this series will almost have to find something to do on their Monday evenings.
Yeah, I think may need to start looking into hobbies. I don't know, maybe crocheting. I don't really know what some of these drivers may be eyeballing up. Fingers crossed, though, that the PRL will be able to return. It takes a lot of effort behind the scenes to organize a series that is as well run as the PRL is, regardless of what kind of series, whether it be this, whether it be the GT3s that you can catch on Tuesday nights, could be the IndyCars that you see on Sundays. It's a lot of effort that goes on behind the scenes, and despite the fact I've only been here for this season, my hope is that the PRL will be able to return. But Darryl, we got one more race left to go, 2 champions to crown, and some teams championship battles to talk about as well in the GT4 class. This is going to be one heck of a way to bring this season to a conclusion.
Yeah, champions to crown over the next hour here at Road America. Pace car comes in, but the question is, when does Adam Brockway decide to release the field? Such a long run up towards the start-finish line means that there's going to be quite a bunch start here. We've seen, you know, a little bit wider starts. We've seen some more bunch starts this season. This is going to be a bunch, and we go green flag racing. The GT4s go racing out of the final corner as well, as the 2 teammates start to control the field immediately in the LMP3s. Eric Leroy is going to slot into P2 unless Mopin Khan can come around the outside. But in fact, Khan's been slotted down into P4, maybe even P5 by the time they get towards the opening corner. Ed Young having to defend in towards the opening turn because Garrett Mange is right on his tail as they run down such a long run from the start-finish line in towards the first braking zone of the lap. Maine's around the outside. Can he get this one done? Looks like he's going to have to settle for P2 as Aiden Young controls the lead, and now he's got teammates Williams and Mennies to think about, because Williams is around the outside at turn 3. Oh no!
Oh, and spinning off the track, heading down into turn number 3. That right there, looking through, trying to figure out who that was, as that's another moment. That right there is Miguel Vigo spun, coming out of turn number 5 in the LMP3 class. This has got to be tough with the encroaching GT4s, trying to get spun back around in the right direction before that massive herd of GT4 cars encroaches upon that spun at number 62 car. Looking at contact being made between the 2 wrong stuff cars. That ain't gonna work, boys. Neither is 3 and nearly 4 wide action into turn number 6.
Really a place where you want to be going side by side at the best of times, let alone 3 wide, let alone 4 as they run their way through the corner. Wrong stuff drivers, of course, still in the championship considerations in the GT4 class. They can't really afford to find themselves coming into contact with each other in the way that they just did. Through they come in towards the carousel for the first time in this race. The sun starting to fight its way through some of the clouds here, and a little bit of pathetic fallacy as maybe this race is going to have a little bit of sun shining on it in terms of how good the action is going to be. Good start though from our pole sitters. They're getting away at the front as they've both now got over a second of advantage over their P2 rivals.
Yeah, building up that cushion right now, which is super, super important. Here we go, side-by-side racing, finally evening out and single filing. Actually, no, Rose, I say that these drivers are deciding to play me like a fiddle. Swapping sides is Ken Copeland, the 115's car, trying to get a move done on his wrong stuff teammates of Michael Brooks. Those were the 2 drivers that came to blows coming out of turn number 5. Gotta say, the wrong stuff drivers always going to be racy. I don't think that's a smart call to race with your teammate that hard at the start of the race. Is contact being made right behind them, involving Gabriel Gutierrez side by side with the 10 car. That nearly didn't work at all coming out at the final corner.
Yeah, Christian Recker, that is in the 10, looking to try and get himself back to his starting position of P6. Just dropped down the 1 of the start of the race. Ayrton Williams going around has promoted pretty much everybody else up a position as we run back in towards turn number 1. The 10 looking for the move. I think just about going to be able to get it through on Gabriel Gutierrez, but not able to get through on Kane Copeland. Some real ducking and diving as Kalen Tobin looks to get involved here as they run in towards turn 3, and they will just about make their way through without any contact. Quick little shout out to Joe Faroni, who's up 6 places off the start. No other drivers up more than 3, so really good launch for him from the back of the field in the GT4s to get himself right into the mid-pack in P11. This is what we saw off of the start, and this is Ed Williams going for a spin at turn number 3.
Yeah, Williams, a simple spin heading around that 3rd corner. Ends up on the grass, doesn't get involved in any more dramas. There we go. There's some drama. Faison Shake spinning, heading down into the corner. That was 3 separate LMP3 drivers losing it, heading into turn number 5. Miguel Vigo has an incident all of his own doing. And look at that. I'm not sure who that was who had to take to the grass and gravel and did the bunny hop as well.
Yeah, but I think it was Victor Couto actually that went out wide and, well, went all that wide all on his own without the incident before. Schwenkler, that is, going around at the carousel, dropping right towards the back of the field on the opening lap as we rejoin the GT4s as they make their way through the carousel for the second time in this race. I think it's fair to say that a couple of drivers are having some difficulties off the start, but generally, as a whole, really good to see that most of the cars have made their way through. Shame for Miguel Vigo to not be taking any further part in this race, but for every other driver in the field, we are racing still, and we've got 32 cars circulating towards the front of their fields, which is exactly what we want to see at the end of the season.
Yes, still nice to see these drivers packed in like sardines in the very early stages of this race. Not even 5 minutes on the board in this hour-long race at Road America. Still a lot that can change between now and the checkered flag, but still got a really good blueprint for a good race to look forward to. Here, David Stevenson trying to get that move done on Kwok Nin, hang down into turn number 5. He gets it done, is spinning right in front. I'm not sure who that was around.
Edwin on off, very much Edwin on off right now. He's off the road at turn number 5. That's not where he needs to be, especially as he's fighting for P2 in the championship. And it's been such a great consistent season for Edwin to put himself where he is. I mean, his worst result of the season is to get 37 points. Second worst result is to get 48. It's been a fantastic calendar for him, but it feels like it's coming undone a little bit towards the end. He's fighting over that P2 in the championship with Zach Hebert, and Zach Hebert up in P4 would take that position off of him if things were to stay as they are. Still a long way to go though, 54.5 minutes worth of racing here at Road America, but compared to other circuits, that time's going to feel like it disappears a little bit quicker because there's such long straights here at the circuit, Ron, that time almost feels like it evaporates at times at this circuit.
Yeah, that certainly does around this racetrack and these kinds of race cars. That start-finish straightaway alone can feel like you're going down it for what feels like a minute and a half. I'll tell you what, one of the most interesting experiences I've ever had driving around iRacing was doing a Formula V race around this track and broadcasting a Formula V race around this track. By the time the leaders came out of turn 14, I was able to actually, able to grow a full beard by the time they made it off into turn number 1. It felt like forever for them heading down there. The Formula Vs, though, much slower cars than these GT4s, but you get the point. The long straightaways around this track take up a decent chunk of it. You think of the flat-out blast of the start-finish straightaway, the stretch between turns 3 and 5, and also the back end of the circuit from the kink through into Canada corner that we just saw these drivers on screen negotiate. That makes up probably about a third of the lap, if not probably upwards of about 40%. So a lot of this lap spent flat out.
It is, and it means that overtaking can be a little bit harder and the opportunities are a little bit thinner and further between, but we know here at Road America that it's a circuit that invites overtaking spots. Seyton Williams invited into the gravel at Canada Corner. We're not a million miles away from Canada, of course, up in Wisconsin near Green Bay, Elkhart Laters. Like the lake, we all know what lake it is, I just can't say it right now. Let's see what happened to it. Williams down into towards Canada Corner. Is there contact? Oh my word, you bet there is. That's a gold hit, not one that you'd normally see. I'm surprised at that.
Well, Aaron Williams saving you there, trying to pronounce Elkhart Lake. It happens to the best of us. For the longest time, I could not pronounce vegetable oil. For some reason, I just was not able to say that. That's a true story, by the way. But yeah, that was a big off-track moment for Williams, heading down into turn number 12. Insult added into injury after that spin we saw for him heading through turn number 3 at the very beginning of this race, and then having that moment into Canada Corner, just rubbing salt into the wounds for the driver, the number 25.
Yes, and it is Elkhart Lake, and I have got there in the end. It reminds me very much of a few months ago, actually, on a Monday night, where I was trying to pronounce TJ Yankee, and I kept saying Teji. So, I am not foreign.
Dick Fleck, Blarney Quando Flern.
Yeah, I'm not foreign to that kind of clear pronunciation error. But here we are. We're keeping traditions up towards the end of the season. Not long has passed in this race, but already I think we're starting to see some of the groups forming in the GT4s. We've got younger names away from the front, and even Christian Menny's in that as well. Then you've got that pack that we were just looking at, Brooks, Copeland and Schmecker. Same thing to what we said in the LMP3s. This top 3 finding it out at the moment as Mobin Khan goes to the inside of Eric Leroy, finally getting himself back to the position that he started in. But they've got a bit of a gap back to Hebert and James, who themselves have a gap back to Stevenson. So I think we are starting to see them gap out a touch, aren't we?
Yeah, we are starting to see them pull out a little bit of a cushion as it stands currently. The front six, though, in that LMP3 category, still separated by about 7 seconds as it stands currently, which, considering we're coming up to 10 minutes into this final 60-minute long race of the season, is rather impressive. Adam Brockway pulling a cushion to Mobin Khan. Khan holding on to the fastest lap, though, as it stands at the present moment. I have a feeling this race at Road America, and I'm hoping that I'm not jinxing this in saying this, we may end up seeing that fight between Adam Brockway and Mobin Khan, which I think is something that we've been secretly waiting and hoping for all throughout this season. Two of the fastest guys in this series in the LMP3s finally having a heads-up, fist-out fight heading through this racetrack at the very end of the season.
It's really what we want to be seeing all season long, isn't it, with a lot of these guys going at it. You know, we've had such great battles of late in some of these championships. Sadly, we haven't really got the Aiden Young, Aaron Myers titanic battle that we've had over the last couple of seasons in the GT4s, but we've still had some great little tussles towards the front. Even last week, the winning margin was not very big, and even though Aiden Young was able to get himself right back towards the front, he wasn't able to win, and it shows that there's still depth in quality in these championships. Ken Copeland doesn't go too deep in towards turn 5. He's still fighting with Chris Schmecker, but that number 10 is promoting himself into the top 5 and looking like he's on a little bit of form at the moment. Was 7th. We saw him make the move into 6th at turn number 1, now getting ahead of Ken Copeland, who is a more than competent driver. Now Michael Brooks is his target for a bit of a gap up to Menzies.
And looking at these drivers still wheeling their race cars, heading off through the carousel right now, will bring up the, I can't even say it's a dirty word in these races, but we got to start talking about lap traffic in the not too far off future here. That's going to be sketchy for the LMP3s and for the GT4 drivers, because for the LMP3s, imagine they catch a GT4 and have to go for a move heading off into the kink. That's sketchy for the P3 driver. For the GT4, if you see an LMP3 car dives here inside line heading off into turn number 11, the kink around this racetrack, you're probably thinking about your life insurance policy as soon as that LMP3 car sticks their nose on the inside. So come time for these lap traffic encounters, we're probably going to see some of the sketchiest moments we've seen all season long.
We are, and I don't think that's really what the drivers want towards the back end of the season, is it? Realistically, they want a nice calm race, they want to know what they're doing, and they want to be able to keep it on the road and have some nice battles. They don't really want to be worrying about some sketchy moments yet, and Williams has had to worry about that a couple of times in this race, which could be really, really costly for him in the championship. Of course, comes into this race P6 after 2 P2s in his last 3 races, but it looks like he's not going to quite be able to get ahead of the likes of Christian Menzies, Chris Schmecker, Ken Copeland. And Christian Menzies, mind you, if he's able to finish inside the top 3, may give himself enough points to gain P3 in the championship, and after a great ending to the season, I'm sure he'd be delighted in that. 2 podiums on it for him, nothing more than a third. Can he try and get himself a top 2 tonight? We'll wait and see. This train, though, providing a lot of the racing action at the moment as we cross over the first 5th of this race. Still a very long way to go for the likes of Schmecker and Copeland to make some moves, but it definitely feels like the number 10 in this battle right now is the one we have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, certainly keeping tabs on that number 10 car. Schmecker trying to make up some moves. He's currently in the midst of a sandwich with some wrong stuff cars. Yeah, the wrong stuff number 83 McLaren of Michael Brooks. Then you got Schmecker, and then right behind you've got the number 15 wrong stuff car of Ken Copeland. The wrong stuff team, if those 2 drivers who were very close to coming up blows out of turn number 5, if they ended up in the barrier, this would have been a catastrophic start to the race for them, because we saw that off-track moment for Robert Schwankler in the 235 car not terribly long ago. These 2 drivers still running solidly inside the top 6 as it stands at the present moment. Michael Brooks, as in certain cases, he's probably been the tail of the wrong stuff cars, but he's currently leading the wrong stuff team as it stands currently in 4th. However, Ken Copeland still sternly within striking distance. Still sternly, I'm not sure if that's a series of words you can find in the Webster's English Dictionary, as Schmecker still maybe trying to size up a move on Brooks and strike while the iron is hot before Ken Copeland and the number 15 Mercedes right behind the number 10 Mercedes decides to go for a move first.
Yeah, I think you've got to be very wary of some of the drivers around you at this stage of a race, because you're all trying to position yourselves, particularly in this opening stint, I should say, to really put yourself into a good position to push on into that second stint. We've seen a lot of drivers go long on the pit strategies and just run their fuel tank dry, which is almost certainly what we're going to see tonight. Staying out in front means that you're going to have to use a little bit more fuel than your competitors. If you're going to want to make some of those moves, you might have to almost take that hit of a bit of a longer pit stop in terms of having to put more fuel on the car, because you're going to guzzle a little bit more throughout the race if you're pushing that little bit harder. A little bit of blinking just in behind, mind you, from the driver currently down in P7. That's Gabriel Gutierrez having some issues as one of the LMP3s tries to come through. That is Adam Brockway, actually. That's the leader overall. It's only taken him 40 minutes to come through onto the leaders in the GT4s, and even though it's a 2-minute lap, it just shows how much faster hit those LMP3s are than the GT4s.
And you can just see that pace differential get put on full display as it stands at the present moment. Now that these encounters are starting to become prevalent, look at that. Schmecker nearly going for the move on Michael Brooks, heading down into turn number 6. Say heading up into turn number 6 with that long climb right before that. Look at that. That's running around the outside. That is sketchy. Ken Copeland getting displaced of by 2 LMP3 cars in the span of a couple of moments. Nearly 3 wide action heading down into turn number 8. These lap traffic encounters are terrifying. I gotta ask you this, Darren, this is definitely a loaded question. What class do you think is probably the more scared when it comes to dealing with lap traffic of each other? Is it the P3s or is it the GT4s? Contact being made coming out of the carousel. That's gonna wipe multiple cars off.
Oh. Yeah, oh, it gets worse and worse and worse. Massive crash. Now Ken Copeland off the road, everyone off the road. That's not even, oh my word, I think that was that phase line shake coming through? I'm not sure, but there was some high commitment stuff through there. Massive impact as they made their way out of the carousel. Well, to answer your question, and I think it's going to be backed up with what I've just seen, GT4 is probably a little bit more scared of what the LMP3s are going to do, because they just drive through you. And that's an example of that. Loads of cars off the road. Victor Couto, one of them, down and out of this race. Michael Brooks, Ken Copeland, they are, well, completely out of contention at least. Massive impact. We're probably going to see that again when the replay is locked and loaded by Hugo. But I think it's not surprising that we've seen that. We've seen time and time again that the GT4s have almost been bullied around by the LMP3s. I mean, there's the slightest bit of contact. The LMP3 trying to come on the outside. In fact, Michael Brooks may be drifting into the P3, but from there, it's just absolute chaos. And a few cars have just decided that they're not going to slow down for the instant they see in front of them, it seems.
Yeah, that was just an ugly incident coming out of the carousel. These drivers, though, in the LMP3 category, clearly not worried about that. As side by side, nearly coming to blows with Zach Hebert and Mobin Khan heading down into turn number 5. Hebert on the outside, Khan on the inside. Look at that. Hebert trying to get that move done. Will he be able to clear him? He will be able to clear Mobin Khan heading off into the corner. Zach Hebert, who won a couple of weeks ago at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, has kicked on the Hyperjets as of late. That 511 car has been fast towards the end of the season and certainly flexing his muscles with that slick move on Khan.
Yeah, and Khan, again, he's been probably the best driver in qualifying over the course of the season, but not quite had the race pace to match, and a couple of little incidents, some of them not even his fault, have cost him this season some really big points. My mind casts back to Phillip Island, where he was in a great position. Contact with the GT4 meant that he dropped down the field. Hebert, though, consistency has been his key over the last 2-3 seasons, even a really good championship finish towards the back end of 2024. It's going to be replicated at the start of 2025, and it's not necessarily with a lot of those headline results. Yes, he's got that win, but he's been able to gain these championship positions without getting wins, without getting podiums, but without getting the wins. Just a lot of top 5s generally is what's got him there. A P2 would be absolutely stellar for him tonight, but the issue is he's got Mobin Khan and very soon Eric Leroy, who are going to be trying to re-overtake him here, because they were in a reversal not too long ago.
And let's see, side-by-side racing continuing with Hebert and Khan heading down that start-finish straightaway off into turn number 1. Let's see how this is going to shake out between these two. Nearly coming to blows. I think they made some contact for sure. Khan running wide, though, and that's going to allow Eric Leroy and the 444 cars to slip his way up into third.
Yeah, and Leroy recovering the position that he lost to Khan and actually to Hebert not too long ago. These three having a great little tussle towards the front of the field in the LMP3s, but the little moment or the little bit of contact between the 511 and the 64 allowing Hebert a little bit of breathing room, and he can try and run into that gap between himself and Adam Brockway and maybe try and close it down. Khan to the outside line at turn number 5. Not going to quite work out there for him though, and he's going to have to sit behind Eric Leroy for a little bit longer and try and find a move somewhere else on the circuit. While all this has been going on, the gap has predictably opened up after that big collision between the likes of Menes and Schmecker, as it has between Menes and Maines, but that gap between the top 2 in the GT4s down to within 7/10 of a second, and Maines looks like he's got a nice lick of face with him right now.
Yeah, looking pretty alright as it stands currently as we see these P3 cars out there on the racetrack. I think as we take a look at a replay, Victor Coit on his perspective in all this, the 72 car. Oh, yeah, that's... I think he maybe should have considered hitting the brakes there, but that's just me. And you can see another driver, Callan Tobin. He hit the brakes, just nowhere to go, hitting the grass and skidding off into the side of the wall, the wrong stuff. I'm not sure who that was in the P3 that came in like a bat out of hell running into the grass and just full commitment decide, okay, yeah, that's fine, just drive through this like it's no big deal. And they got away with it without any further incident. I'm not sure who that was, but chances are they probably have to carry them around in a wheelbarrow.
Yeah, I feel like it was Faizan Sheikh, but it may not have been coming through. There could have been JP Alfonso. I'm just trying to think of the liveries of the cars coming through. I'm not too sure how kindly Race Control would look at that with a car just, I guess, picking the right line, but going onto the grass, pretty much full commitment. Really the safest way to negotiate your way around a collision like that. But hey, end of the season, not like they're going to be able to get any kind of, penalty that hangs over to the start of next season, that's for sure. 1/3 of this race has now elapsed. We're into the second third, and we're still probably about 20 minutes away from a lot of the pit stops in this race. Nice battles are ongoing through most of the field. This one we're looking at here is between Kurt Ham and Justin Bragan for P8 in the GT4 class, and green versus green and yellow. I know we're in Wisconsin. Feels a little bit like we're watching a Green Bay livery if you combine the two of them. Justin looking like he's going to overtake or try to overtake in the not too distant future, but the middle of the pack driver very much in the middle of the pack, 9th out of the 19 cars that started this race.
I'm not sure what to say about the Green Bay reference on the account of the fact that I know next to nothing about American football, which is saying something considering I'm the American on this broadcast and live in the city that's the home of the team that won the Super Bowl about a month ago. But regardless, looking at this battle involving Justin Bragan in the number 71 car, maybe trying to reel in that McLaren in front. Not the best exit in the world for Kurt Ham in that number 74 car. Let's see if that will result in these drivers going side by side in the not too far off future. It's been a rather clean start outside of that major kerfuffle coming out of the carousel and a couple of off-track excursions here and there. It's been a clean one up to this point, and hopefully with me saying that, I didn't just jinx it, as Kurt Ham runs a little bit wide coming out of turn number 5, and this may be the shot that Justin Bragan in that middle of the pack racing number 71 Mercedes tries to take. Not going to go for the move into turn number 7 because that is a recipe for disaster, but maybe into turn number 8 in a couple of moments time. Looks like that gap got balloon out. Not close enough to be able to get that move done, but I feel something brewing with this Bragan and Ham fight.
Yeah, it's nice to get an onboard view of some of these GT4 drivers and how they're able to negotiate their way around a lap here at Road America. Just not really getting close enough to the back of Kurt Ham to really put him under any kind of pressure, but still, sticking it around towards the top end of the field. I think Justin will be pleased about how it's going so far. He's had a decent season, P8 in the championship, P9 now. You can kind of see the similarities there. I think he'll be content to finish where he is, albeit maybe looking to get ahead of Gabriel Gutierrez for P7 in the championship by the close of play. Ayrton Williams trying to recover through the field as well. He's getting through the field after his spin on the opening lap. We saw it at turn 3. He had another moment as well, didn't he, down at Canada Corner after the first couple of laps, and recovering very nicely and showing some pace that he's got. Going back to the Green Bay conversation very quickly, I was very thankful. I know you don't know much about the NFL, but I know that you said before the broadcast that Green Bay suck, and I have to say, as a Chicago fan, Ron, I did really quite appreciate that.
That is putting words into my mouth right there. I haven't been to Green Bay myself. I think the town of Green Bay, Wisconsin is the home of about 5 things, and that I know for sure. I'm not really sure what else to say outside of that. So let's.
Hey, look, it's the last race of the season. I've got to throw you under the bus at some point.
Fair enough.
It's been too long. Faizan Sheikh looking for a move past David Stevenson at the moment. This is a nice little battle that we're seeing. I think for Faizan, he's not been here a couple of times so far this season, which is why he finds himself a little bit further down in the championship, P19 in the championship. But a good result at the end of the season could just give you a bit of a confidence boost, not necessarily going into other races in the PRL, but just generally for your league racing scene.
Yeah, just having a good result here and there. Mobin Khan looking to have one here at Road America as he finds himself in 4th. Leroy got that move done on him coming out of turn number 1 a couple of laps ago after Khan ran a little bit wide. That's another point to raise about this track as well. Pretty much no asphalt runoff area to speak of on certain corners around this track. I say that though, in real life around Road America now, turn 1 does have a quite substantial amount of asphalt runoff area, which is great and all, except if you're running an IndyCar race right after that, in which case you may pick up the bunny hop coming out of the corner. But for this scan of Road America, not a whole lot of asphalt runoff area to speak of. It's usually just grass and then gravel, so rather unforgiving circuit here up there in Wisconsin.
Yeah, let's see if anything can develop here between Mobin Khan as he flashes his lights. Be a little bit unhappy with what he's seen. Maybe just making sure that the GT4 knows that he was still coming through and not to come back onto the racing line before they made their way through the left-hander. The carousel, it garners no overtaking opportunity for Khan for the time being, but a good exit through there and into the kink can set you up nicely for a run in towards Canada Corner. The little kinks to the left and right, they, of course, can catch out the best of drivers. Joseph Newgarden, I remember, I think a couple of years ago, nearly crashing down the straight without any kind of pressure. It's easy to do. You've got to be on your toes, and when a straight isn't quite a straight, it can feel like it's less of an overtaking opportunity, but we've seen more than a fair share of cars go down the inside there.
Yeah, heading down the not-so-straight straightaway, there is a lot of stuff that can catch you off there. That section heading down into Canada Corner has called out a decent chunk of drivers in real life and in the sim as well. I think I'm trying to remember any experiences that I've had personally. There's not really any that are popping into my mind, but throw some wet weather around this track, which is something we were kind of expecting heading into this race. It can create a little bit of a sketchy moment in certain parts where you won't really think twice of any sort of moment like that. I will say, in reference to the weather, it's clearing up rather well at the moment here, Dara. The fog not really as terrible as it once was, and keeping our fingers crossed that it's going to remain this way between now and the checkered flag. The headlight's still on, but we can actually see further than a half a mile.
Yeah, and it's almost like I can hear Annie singing across the circuit that the sun will come out tomorrow right now. So it's nice that the weather's improving, and it means that there's a little bit more visibility for the drivers, particularly if there's any kind of incident into the carousel again. Hopefully we won't see drivers steam their way into it in the same way that we saw before, but hey, you can never be too careful. Still, this battle for P2 rages on in the LMP3s. I'm intrigued, really, how they're not able to gap out. Brockway looks like he's comfortable at the front. He doesn't really look like he's pushing on right now. 7 seconds is his advantage to Hebert, as it has been for quite some time. But he's 3 ahead of Faizan Sheikh, not a driver that we generally see in some of the top 5 so far this season. I don't think they're going to be concerned about seeing him behind. I mean, do we think that that could mean that they could start fighting a little bit more as we get towards the back end of this race? Or do you think that with this being the final race of the season and all of them pretty much set in the positions that they're going to be in, that they're just going to be happy to pick up the points and not risk losing a lot of time in positions?
I could honestly see both sides of it, Dara. These drivers may decide, you know what, screw it, it's a final race. I'm pretty much locked in where I am at the moment in the points. I may as well go for all-out glory, and hey, if I crash, I crash. On the flip side of that, though, as well, I can see these drivers being like, hey, I just want to have a smooth end to the day, as coming into the pits is Zach Hebert and Mobin Khan. This is rather early. I haven't even hit the halfway mark of this race, and these drivers that now is the time to pounce into the pits.
Yeah, we don't see this in the LMP3 GT4 Challenge here in the PRL, that drivers come in before half distance. Faizan Sheikh's coming in as well. Tell me that they're running the fuel tank low. I know it's a very, power-dominated circuit. A lot of fuel is going to be used around here, but surely they're not getting through an entire tank before we get through half an hour. Hebert gets into his box as we see Mobin can't get stopped as well. The little variables, of course, really important to nail, but I'm shocked that they're coming to the pit lane this early. Maybe is it because they don't want to have to lap some of the GT4s again? They're trying to minimize the amount of times they meet them, but this is not something we see often at all.
I think that theory that you just had a couple of moments ago there is spot on, as Zach Hebert going to jump in front of Mobin Khan as a result of his pit cycle. And I think there may be a rather big gap between those two drivers, because I can't see if Mobin Khan has exited out of the pits yet or not. There you can see him just cresting the hill now into turn number 3 right now. But the point I was going to raise is I think you may have just hit the nail on the head there. They may have decided that now is the time to pit to avoid another sketchy encounter with the drivers coming down pit lane. When we first saw some of the LMP3 runners catch up to the drivers in GT4, it was in the form of those two, Mobin Khan and Zach Hebert. They were trying to battle for position, not lose time on each other, while they're having to deal with side-by-side racing for the GT4s and trying to overtake them at the same time. There was a lot of stuff going on, so if I'm being brutally honest, wouldn't blame them in the slightest for saying, hey, I don't want to lose out on a boatload of time, and maybe also thinking as well, hey, Adam Brockway's been dominant thus far this season. He's dominant in this race yet again, has now a 10-second gap to himself and Eric Leroy, who's now slotted P2. May as well just throw something at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, and I think maybe, well, I know that's going to be tricky to manage, of course, with the lack of fuel in Brockway's car, likely going to be helping him out in comparison to the guys that have just come into the pit lane. Stevenson and Onofre joining Khan and Hebert from the last lap in pit road. I think likely what we're going to see is Brockway and Leroy come in on the same lap. Teammates well, as they are teammates, they've matched each other all season long, and I think have been in good contact with each other to get themselves in the best positions possible throughout these races. Busy pit road. You can see a few of the LMP3s, a couple of them damaged, a couple of them in pit road for the fuel. We'll see who will come out first between Stevenson and Onofre. Still sitting there. When do they jump? When do they move? It should be Stevenson who's ahead of Onofre by the time they get out of the pit lane, but Onofre's going to come out first, actually, and he will emerge quite some distance ahead, actually. So good to see that he is out of pit lane pretty safely, and he's got a nice little gap back to Kwok Nyin, who was also coming to the pit lane. I do believe, yes, he has, came in last time around, but Edward Onofre making sure to hold him off for the time being.
Yeah, still holding him off as it stands at the present moment, as we see this fight of Young and Garrett Maines. These are the two drivers who have taken the lion's share of victories thus far this season in the GT4 category. We've talked at length about Aiden Young and how quick he has been thus far this season. Has 5 wins leading into the final race of this season. Garrett Maines, meanwhile, has 2. The only other driver outside these two to grab a win is currently running a little bit farther in the back in the form of Ken Copeland, who got a piece of that incident earlier on, I believe, is out of this race. So that's going to be a real disastrous run for the Wrong Stuff team. That's just about going to cost them the GT4 class teams championship, because we saw them involved in a battle. But currently our highest running of the Wrong Stuff cars is Robert Schwenkler down in P10, so not the race that they probably had in mind. Things went from pretty sketchy with those two in the form of Michael Brooks and Ken Copeland nearly coming to blows, then Schwenkler having that off-track moment. Things have gone from bad to worse, side by side with Garrett Maines and Aiden Young hang down into turn number 5. Look at that, Maines fighting on the inside line and getting that move done.
Yeah, up into the lead of the race, and could he deny the champion in waiting a final win of the season? Aiden Young, a little bit of contact from the rear end of the number 12, getting himself back through and ahead again as they run their way through this middle sector now. It's getting a little bit feisty between the 427 and the number 12. If Aiden Young can win tonight in the final week before the sabbatical for the league, Aiden Young could put himself tied for 10th in the all-time PRL winners list, a prestigious list of drivers, and it could be if he can get there. Aiden's 25th victory, I should say, should he come home for the victory tonight. Garrett Mains looking to upset that figure in the number 12. He did it at the start of the season, looking to do it at the end, and he's giving it a very, very good go, it's fair to say.
Yeah, he has given it the old college try, to invoke a little bit of American terminology. Side-by-side racing between Hebert and Kahn off through turn number 5. These racers really scrapping hard. I think despite the fact that it is a final race and a lot of these drivers are just about set in terms of what position they're going to finish in the championship, they want to end this season on the best note that they can, as contact being made heading up the hill. Carter James nearly getting left hooked by Kwok Nin coming out of turn number 5 into turn number 6. Thankfully, it didn't result in a big collision like it could have, but Kwok Nin feeling really racy along with a decent chunk of the field.
Yeah, Nien almost, well, looking for the move down in towards that left-hander, but not going for it in the end. The carousel's never going to gain you a position, but a difficult run through the corner for Carter James could give him a run towards Canada corner. No collision with the GT4 on the outside line as they run through the carousel this time round. Good to see that there's no repeat of what we saw before, at least for the time being, as Quilton will get closer and closer to that number 99 car in front of him. Not close enough to make any kind of move, though, and he's going to have to be content to sit behind in P9 for the time being. At least. Mike Gallant coming into the pit lane in the GT4s. I think that the gapping out in the LMP3s has given way to that closing battle, particularly for the lead in the GT4s. But it shows that there is still a lot to fight for in this race, not least for the overall podium position. Zach Hebert and Mobin Khan fighting over what would be P2 right now, maybe P3 depending on where Eric Leroy would come out. But they are giving it quite a lot against each other. Bracken on the inside, well, the outside line into turn 3 is going to be in the way somewhat. But can Mobin Khan get a better exit? Let's see. Hebert could be under pressure as they run towards 5.
Yeah, and here we go. Mobin Khan pulling out to try and get that move done on Hebert down this flat-out blast through the marine sweep right now into turn number 5. Let's see, Khan on the inside line, Hebert on the outside. Here we go into the braking zone. Both of them run wide, both of them lock up, and holy cow, Mobin Khan nearly flipped it.
I don't know whether you're meant to go onto 2 wheels in it. Well, actually, no. I know you're not meant to go onto 2 wheels in an LMP3. I don't quite know how he's managed that, and don't really know how he's still in P5 and not spun himself around. They both broke too late, just trying to get the better line. And, I mean, both walked off the road. Let's see it from Mobin's point of view. Let's see what the angle of the camera looks like. That left-hand side of the car bouncing up and then getting over the grass as well. That is a scary moment. Not what I can remember seeing, really, an LMP3 on 2 wheels.
Now we're going to take a look at another replay of this. This was bizarre that both of them had a game of chicken into the braking zone. Mobin Khan had both inside tires, both left side tires up off the deck coming at turn 4. Had to have been some sort of bump. I think I mentioned earlier on in this season at Long Beach how one time driving a Super Formula car around there, I managed to grip roll it in the runoff area of turn number 1. May have seen that happen a couple of moments ago in the LMP3, so side-by-side racing going to continue. Look at that. Yeah, he hit a bump and the outside tires were just like, yep, I'm sticking it up whereby I can flip this car. Hits the gravel as he lands back on all 4s, and then that isn't the end of his aerial acrobatics as well. Hits the berm of the gravel and bang up into the air yet again. My back hurts just looking at those drivers and that off-track moment for Khan as we jump back to live action and see a side-by-side battle with Aiden Young and Garrett Mains. Oh, contact!
Yeah, and that's going to put Aiden Young into the wall. Garrett Mains, I wonder how much damage there is on that 427 car. Aiden Young can't really afford to not finish this race. Yes, we have got, we've got Arnaud Jeunesse not really anywhere to be seen at all. And by that I mean he's not here. So he won't really be battling in for the championship. But Aiden Young really needs to finish to make sure he gets this one wrapped up. Garrett Mains in P1 now with that little bit of contact. We'll watch it again from the aerial view. I think Garrett just gets into the back of Aiden Young here, trying to get the up and under. He doesn't quite get it done, and yeah, drives into the back of Aiden Young. And there wasn't really much that the 427 could do in that scenario. Will be interesting to see what's said about that one, or whether Aiden Young can close down the gap. Not that long left comparatively. And when Garrett Mains looked like he had the pace over Young for much of the race, it's going to be difficult to see if he can close that 5.7 second gap.
So we take a look at another angle of that, this time running on board with Garrett Maines. That was just a messy incident coming out of turn number 5, a messy accident to be sure, as we see Adam Brockway coming down in the pits from the lead overall with 21 minutes left to go, about 22. Side-by-side racing, though, involving Zach Hebert and Eric Leroy. This is a heads-up fight. Leroy yet to come into actually, I believe Eric Leroy has come in for his pit stop in this race. My apologies there. Either way, though, this is a heads-up battle for position. Hebert, Leroy, Kahn covered by practically nothing. Brockway out and away out of the pits. So that's going to be a rather comfortable lead for the number 42 driver to find himself holding on to in the dying breaths of this race. Is side by side between Leroy and Kahn heading down.
Yeah, and Eric Leroy with a 4-lap fresher car, maybe a little less fuel. Let's see if it can help him. Mobin Khan's coming to the inside, though. Maybe the tyres are still a little bit cold after trundling down pit road. Then Eric Leroy, the 444, slipping back to P4. Let's see if he can find his way back onto the podium. I think from this point, it's quite easy to call that the LMP3 Teams Championship is going the way of Murat and Sem Squad Oceana Coffee, with Brockway and Leroy first and fourth, and already having quite a decent margin in the championship. Maines out of the pit lane with a 24.1 second pit stop, 23.7 for Aidan Young. No damage repairs taken by the champion in waiting, which is good to see, and it means that there isn't too much of a lasting impact from that contact in the front two. Less maybe for a little bit of time loss from the 427.
Yeah, just a little bit of time, a little bit of time loss. I don't think he lost too much outside that. Maybe a little bit of damage on that race car potentially. Either way, though, Aidan Young, it's not going to turn his spirits down from what has been a stellar season for the driver of the 427 car. As you said a couple of moments ago, Dara, if he does get the job done and win this race, he would join some very exclusive company in terms of being some of the best PRL driver, one of the best PRL drivers that we have ever seen in the history of this league. Aidan Young in some rather exclusive company as it stands at the present moment, finds himself in P2, which maybe wouldn't be the result that he would have in mind to cap off a stellar season, but still P2. I was going to say I don't think he would complain. He may be a little bit upset that's not the win, but either way, going to help him out regardless, as I think we may have just seen an alien abduction on screen with Kurt Ham, who's just completely vanished. As I think we may have also had a alien abduction of my booth mate here, Dara, so hopefully we'll be able to get him back in a couple of moments' time. But still, looking at this racing action as it stands at the moment, jumping back to the LMP3 category and following this battle for second involving Zach Hebert, Mobin Khan, and Eric Leroy. These cars covered by practically nothing. He can cover these two that he got on screen right now with a blanket. Zach Hebert and Mobin Khan covered by nothing. They're going to be side by side, maybe heading down into turn number 5. Not close enough is Mobin Khan in the number 64 car. Certainly giving it the shake, the fair shake to Zach Hebert. Hebert occupying P2 as it stands at the present moment, and this is going to be a heads-up fight all the way to the end of this race.
Yeah, I do apologise there. It's always good when you're making a point to make sure that your microphone is live and not muted.
Been there, done that today.
Alien abductions, so yeah, we've all been there. Regularly, we know when it's happening. So yeah, sorry about that, everybody. But yeah, Zach Hebert, Mobin Khan, Eric Leroy in this battle, with all three of them, I think very much keen to get themselves onto what could be the final LMP3 podium for some time in the PRL. Zach Hebert, a driver with such consistency, I think would feel like he deserves to be up there. Mobin Khan, with the pace that he's had, particularly over the last couple of seasons, will feel like he deserves to be up there. Brockway, being the champion in waiting, absolutely deserves to be up towards the front of the field. What can Eric Leroy do to try and upset that little battle, though? And of course, himself fighting to get a little bit higher up in the championship. As it stands, he'd overtake JP Alfonso. He'd overtake Victor Couto as well. So he'd be a little bit higher in the championship, maybe even Kwok Nyin 2. So he could find himself P7 in the championship by the close of play, but he is fighting over those extra couple of points, even with Mobin Khan, who's looking to get himself up into the top 2 if he can get the right line in towards turn 1. Outside is where he's going to have to be forced, though, because a good defensive line is being driven by Zach Key, but it's worked a couple of times, and it's going to work again. Mobin's going to have to find somewhere else on the circuit, or at least a better line into turn 1 if he can even get there to make this move stick.
And let's see if he will be able to make that move stick between now and the checkered flag of this final race of the season, coming up in just 17 minutes time. It has been a brilliant season here for the PRL LMP3 and GT4 championship, and it's still left to be decided. There we go, Mobin Khan trying to get that move done on Zach Hebert. Will it be a case of deja vu like when they went side by side a couple of moments ago? They're still side by side on exit, so it works out a little bit better for both of those drivers. Mobin Khan still not good enough on the exit of turn 5 to still be alongside heading off into turn number 6. Mobin Khan certainly feeling racy in that 64 car, but as much as he's within striking distance and always ready to pounce, I think Zach Keeper just knows where to place that 511 car.
And I think it's worth making the point that the only reason that Eric Leroy is in this battle is because these two were fighting when they were, doing the overcut. Because, Mobin Khan had his two-wheel moment whilst Eric Leroy had yet to come into the pit lane. They've been tussling side by side a few times, and that's allowed Leroy to stay relevant in this race. He would have been at least 3 or 4 seconds back had they not have come together those couple of times, and they still continue to fight. But you can see that the hangover effect of that collision, or that moment down into turn 5, really coming to the fore, with Hebert and Khan very much making the corner a lot more cautiously than they had before. Weren't going to make the same mistake twice, and in the end it showed that Mobin went too aggressive the first time, maybe too conservative the second time. He's going to have to try and find a bit of a balance in the middle with a quarter of this race left to run. Negotiate your way around the GT4 should be easy enough towards the opening corner on the racetrack, but if you're Mobin Khan, you're going to try to get at turn 5, or are you going to try and surprise Zach Hebert somewhere around this track?
I think in the case of Mobin Khan, it's going to be the story of the 3 bearers. We'll just call it the 3 overtaking opportunities. One time was too risky, the other time was too cautious, the third time will be just right. Let's see if that does shake out, or whether or not he's going to play me like a fiddle. I think Mobin Khan lost out on a boatload of time with that lap traffic encounter a couple of moments ago. That Mercedes flashed in the headlights, not entirely sure why that is the case, but regardless, Khan going to lose out on a decent chunk of time to the back of Zach Hebert, locking up again, heading down into turn number 5. That turn 5 braking zone, so tricky to try and get right, considering you're turning heading into it, you're heading down the hill, and in those LMP3s, super easy to snag a wheel heading into the braking zone. So won't be shocked if that's the reason why Mobin Khan is locked up so much. I also will not be shocked if that's part of the reason why he has lost a little bit of time to that car. Oh, look at that, that's a sketchy moment with the GT4 rejoining the track right in front of him.
And it's not really what you really want to be seeing, is it, right in front of you, as you're fighting over a really important position in this final race of the season. Ooh, Eric Leroy getting to the inside at the kink. You could see that coming from a mile away, but made sure that he got through cleanly. We've seen a couple of bad moments down there in the past in multi-class racing. Thankfully, not one here. So we still have a little while left for these guys to battle it out. Teammate to Mobin Khan getting out of the way. That could be Christian Menes, although I believe it is Ayrton Williams who is going a little bit slower through there. Not able to really help out Mobin on the run towards the final couple of corners, and Mobin's going to have to try and find somewhere else to make this move stick. If you're watching along to this thinking that, well, are we missing any other battles on the circuit? The short answer to that is no. No one else is within a second apart from this little group of cars, so you're not missing anything at all. And in fact, we may see the move materialize here. Khan to the outside, but again, not the right line, not the place to make a move, and Zach holds on yet again.
Yeah, still holding on as it stands currently. That 511 car has put on a defensive masterclass ever since the first round of pit stops that we saw, the only round of pit stops. And really even before then as well, Zach Hebert has been driving the widest Ligier LMP3 car that you can see all across the globe. But it's only a matter of time. Mobin Khan trying to get that move done down the inside into turn number 5. Will it be successful? Hebert goes a little bit deep into the brakes, cuts it a bit close on exit. However, Hebert still being able to defend that spot. I think part of the reason why that is the case is I think Zach Hebert in that 511 car is just a bit more confident heading through the braking zones.
Yeah, and I think it's really pertinent that he is able to stay in front for the time being, because Mobin is almost trying to watch what Zach Hebert is doing in some of these corners and then try and pick a differing line or a almost surprising line for the 511 to be almost put off of his rhythm that he's currently in at the moment. But with every passing lap and with every missed opportunity, you feel that Mobin's going to become a little bit more and more, not desperate, but keen to get through on Zach Hebert. Not really the position you want to be in. P3 just so close to P2, especially towards the end of the season. You want to make that move, particularly towards the end of the race, but it's not just there for the time being. Edwin Onofre, I want to have a quick little mention of him. Set the fastest lap last time around. He's trying to chase down Faizan Sheikh, and he's trying to get himself back into the top 5 after he went off in the early stages of the race.
Yeah, trying to make up that time. That's the thing when it comes to these hour-long races. Even if you have an incident towards the early stages, you still have a boatload of time to try and make up some ground and make up for yourself if it was if it was a self-inflicted moment. Here we go, though. Mobin Khan maybe trying to make the move stick into turn number 1. Not close enough yet. Again, Zach Hebert just being absolutely dominant in through the braking zones. Mobin Khan may need to switch up his approach when it comes to all of this, because those moves into the braking zone, as much as he gets it side by side, gets close to getting the move done, he still finds himself in third. He may need to make a big swing at things as side by side heading down that back straightaway.
Yeah, inside line now for Mobin Khan. He's got a great overlap. Is he able to get it done this time around? Later braking from Zach Hebert around the outside. What a defensive move it is from the number 511 to keep himself in P2. Khan, though, with an inside line as they rise over the crest into turn 6. Not going to work out for him there. And Zach Hebert holding firm, really showing what he's made of at this stage of the race. They're coming up towards the back of Christian Menes now, who may be able to help out Mobin Khan's team a little bit. Not really as they work their way through the corner, but a real textbook display of defending right now from Zach Hebert. Mobin Khan is going to be getting frustrated, but sometimes you just have to applaud some of these moves because he is so tricky to get through right now.
Yes, super tricky to try and negotiate all of the battles that you've got in class while you're continuing to deal with the lap traffic. That is huge. Look at that, trying to lap the second place runner in GT4 of Aiden Young. He finds himself about 9 seconds back of Garrett Maines currently, so it's not going to be the way that Aiden Young probably wants to end off this season, but it's still going to be a championship for him if he can just hold on and take that checkered flag. But at the front of this field, this Hebert and Khan fight has allowed them, despite the fact they've been going side by side, they've broken away quite substantially from Eric Leroy. Now finds himself in a 4th, running effectively all by himself, as here's a moment for Jeff Rosenberger coming out of the carousel and bang into the inside wall.
And that front right immediately looking pretty bad, quite frankly. Luckily that there wasn't really anybody else coming through to get collected in that. Everyone could avoid, then he could toe back to pit road and get himself out of the way there. Less than 10 minutes to run then in the championship that has been so entertaining, so enthralling, race after race, and we've never been far away for a really important battle. And we're right here for P2 between Zach Hebert and Mobin Khan in this race. Can Mobin Khan get it done this time around? They're going to get their way through on Garrett Maines, the GT4 leader. Can Aiden Young, can Mobin Khan use the traffic to his advantage? No, it is the short answer to that. Time is now starting to really tick away from him to make this move stick, but Zach Hebert, again, defensively really, really solid. I think it's worth pointing out as well with the GT4s, with these guys just coming through on Young and Menes, that Menes is starting to close up a touch on the 427 of Young. Young is falling back away from Maines, and whether that's a case of the pace deficit that he had at the start of the race, you know, clearly holding up Maines in the first half, whether that's the pace deficit coming to the 4, or whether that's a little bit of damage on the car, we're not too sure, but Menes may try and get himself to the top 2 by the end of this race, and you know, with only a 5-second gap, I think he'd back himself to at least have a bit of a go.
And let's see how these final 8 minutes of this race are going to shake out. It is absolutely flown by, but as it stands currently, only a couple more laps from this season, a season which has seen it all. We've had some brilliant racing action, some dominant performances, and some goofy moments from time to time, but I think coming to the end of this race, as much as the class and championship battles at the front of the field are just about sorted, Adam Brockway and Garrett Maines, your current leaders in LMP3 and GT4 respectively, the battles behind are still rather intense. This Hebert and Khan fight has been the center of attention for quite a while at this point. And it's been a game of itchy and scratchy between these two. Hebert just able to hold on and hold off any sort of challenge from Momin Khan, which I think is starting to get under the skin of the driver of the number 74 car slightly, as he looks for a move hang down into turn 1.
Yeah, looking for it again, but he's just not quite able to find it at the moment. Edwin Onofre going faster still in his number 96 LMP3, but he's not quite able to get close enough to finish line shake to make any kind of move. Now, again, down the Moraine sweep. Is there a chance for Momin Khan? It's been the place where he's been closest every single lap for at least the last 10-15 minutes. Can he make a move this time around? They've got a GT4 that they may have to worry about in the braking zone. And he's not going to really force the issue. I think you can see that GT4 didn't want to find himself side by side and maybe having to go three-way on the exit, and will stay behind yet again. Is there going to be that one more opportunity for him towards the end of this race, or is he just going to have to settle himself for P3? We'll have to find out over the closing handful of laps. We've got about the 4 or 5 to go. I think it will be 4 when they cross the line next time by. But they're still relatively close to Adam Brockway. Adam Brockway's not been able to run away at the front, but, I don't know about you, Ron, but I feel like that may just be more of, just consolidation, a bit more of a Monday evening cruise to the end. He knows he's got everything wrapped up.
Yeah, just spending a Monday evening, not stressing out too much, just being like, screw it, just drive around the racetrack for a little bit, hit the marks. Don't need to go for anything spectacular. We're not awarding extra points for any sort of stylistic slides off the circuit that someone has, so at this point in time, just being able to make it home and bring this season to a conclusion, taking that final checkered flag, and knowing, regardless of how you did throughout the season, that you're able to tackle that mountain and climb it all, tackle the adventure of a very intense season. Only 9 races long here for the PRL, which means every single race has a bit more of an added importance to it than what you usually see in some other series. So still always going to be a solid race nevertheless, as side by side heading down to turn 1 yet again. Momin Khan yet again unsuccessful.
Yeah, looking for it at every which point now. Outside line down in towards turn 3. Can this one come to the number 64? Not quite, but he's going to get a much better exit, far better exit compared to Zach Hebert as they run their way down towards turn number 5 again. He's going to find an inside line as well. He's not been here for such a long time, but he's now got the chance to find his way on the better racing line up the inside and get this move done. And Zach Hebert's defended time and time again around the outside. Is it going to hold once again? He's got the racing line. He's got a great exit. He's got P2 still, and will Zach Hebert's defenses be breached? Time's running out for Khan, but this is impeccable defensive driving.
Oh, it is brilliant defensive driving from Zach Hebert. That right there is a man who's completely comfortable with his own talents behind the wheel of a race car and be very confident behind the wheel of the car, point blank, period. That is rather impressive in terms of the defensive masterclass that he's been able to put on thus far in that 511 car. Will he be able to hold off any sort of challenge from Momin Khan? And how exactly is Momin Khan thinking about all this? He's got a little bit of red on that car, and I'm wondering as to whether or not he's had any sort of red mist ever since the drop of the green flag. Not necessarily because of some other stuff that's going on, but mainly because of the fact he has not been able to get past Zach Hebert. He has thrown a lot of stuff at the wall, and nothing has been able to stick.
It's not been able to stick at all, and he's going to be trying everything now in the closing. 3 laps in this race to try and find a move through, but, I mean, actually, final 2 laps in this race. Time ticking away, actually. I'm not too sure when Adam Brockway crosses the line, but actually, I think we're going to only have 2 more to run here. In fact, we absolutely will. So 2 more to go. White flag next time by for Brockway, Hebert and Khan. 1, 2, and 3 at the moment. Can Khan find himself into P2 by the end? Let's wait and see. Edwin Onofre, fastest lap. He's in P5. Now, he comes into this race with a 3-point advantage over Zach Hebert. If he can get through on Eric Leroy, Hebert and Onofre would be tied on points by the end of the season. I'm going to have to work it out on countback if that is the case in the end, because I know they both have a win this season, but that's something that we have to really keep an eye on. Carr's not as close as he was this time last lap. I don't think he's going to have a go at 5 this time around.
Yeah, not going to go for it, hang off into turn number 5. I can't necessarily say I'm surprised by that. Those overtakes into turn number 5. I mean, just flashing our minds back to earlier on in the race, Mobin Khan was flying that car around the corner like he was flying a kite with the 2 inside tires up off the ground, the left side, completely lifting off the deck. Turn 5 and Mobin Khan have not gone along very well thus far in this race. So as it stands currently, I think Mobin Khan maybe just saying, you know what, we've only got one more lap of racing action. I've thrown every single thing at the wall. I don't think anything's going to stick. I think Mobin Khan maybe resigned to the fact he's got to finish in P3, as that gap has ballooned between himself and Hebert over the past couple of moments.
Has ballooned, but I mean, only to about 7/10 of a second. There is still definitely a chance for him to make his way back through. Onofra hasn't been able to run away from Faizan Sheikh after making that move for P5, and it doesn't look like he's going to be able to get into P4, possibly losing out on that top 2, or top 3, I should say. Oh no, top 2 in the championship. Zach Hebert looks like he's going to be able to just about pip him at the post. As we come around to start what I think will be the final lap of this race. It certainly will be, because Adam Brockway's just crossed the line now. There's 1 minute 43 to go on the clock. He's not going to be able to get around before the checkered flag flies, and I think once we cross the start-finish line, we'll be able to see Barney waving the white flag for what could be the final time in a long time on a Monday night here in the PRL. There he is, waving with real gusto, but can Faizan Sheikh end his race with gusto with the move past him and off for inside-outside? Looks like it's going to be sitting in behind him, waiting. Maybe a chance into turn 5 for him.
Yeah, as this battle is looking really intense on the last lap of racing action from this season. Edwin Onofre, who won earlier on this season at Long Beach, trying to withstand that challenge from Faizan Sheikh to remain in that final top 5 spot. Sheikh ran a little bit wide coming out of turn number 3. That's not going to help out his cause too much. However, this long stretch into turn number 5 going to be just enough time for him to close up that gap. Not close enough to go for the move, though. Heading off into turn number 5, Edwin Onofre just needs to piece together a good final half of this lap, and he'll be home scot-free in that number 96 car and set to finish in 5th. Think of the competitiveness in this series. All of the drivers at the north end of the field have either grabbed the victory thus far this season in the LMP3s, or have certainly gotten close. Adam Brockway, who we see on screen right now, on track for yet another victory. This is going to be his 5th of the season if he can just bring it home, and it'll be a fitting way to cap off a brilliant season.
He has been the dominant force in the LMP3s. There's been no doubt about that. He's going to win the championship by just shy of 50 points, just to really put a rubber stamp on the dominance that he's shown. He's going to come out of this race a driver's champion, a team's champion as well, and the double will be complete by Adam Brockway. He's been an absolutely incredible driver all season long. It's his 8th win in LMP3s in the PRL in history. It's his 5th of the season, and he is the champion here on your Monday night in the PRL. A real wiggle across the line to show how happy that he is. Across the line they come between Hebert and Khan. Hebert just about going to hold on to P2, and in doing so gets himself P2 in the championship. What an accolade for him. I'm sure he's going to be delighted. Mobin Khan just not able to do it by the end of the race, but as those leaders are coming across the line, there's a GT4 off the road. That's not going to upset Garrett Mains, though. He's driven a stellar race tonight, hasn't he, Ron?
Oh yeah, he has driven an absolutely brilliant race. Garrett Mains on track for his 3rd win of this season, and despite the fact there's a little bit of argy-bargy action that resulted in Garrett Mains grabbing the race lead, it's still going to be a win nevertheless. Close quarters battling, and Garrett Mains was able to usurp the challenge from Aiden Young, who's been brilliant all throughout this season. No discrediting Aiden Young, though. He is set to become your champion in the GT4 category in a couple of moments' time when he crosses that start-finish line, but Garrett Mains looks like he's going to be able to pip him in the final race of this season. Mains heading his way down into turn number 14 for the final time this season, and that 12 car going to grab his 3rd win.
He is going to grab his 3rd win of the season. What a season it's been for Aiden Young, but when Garrett Mains has turned up, he has really put the champion under pressure. The number 12 starts the season, ends the season as he started it with a win here at Road America. I'm sure he's going to be delighted in the cockpit. We'll get a word from him in a little bit. But for Aiden Young, it's not going to be for him in terms of the win at the end of the season, but that won't matter. The most dominant championship that he's had in quite some time, I think it's fair to say. He is once again, for the 4th time in a row, the GT4 champion on a Monday night in the PRL. Incredible consistency from him over the last year here to get himself yet another title. Christian Menes and Chris Schmerecker, I should say, 3rd and 4th. Etton Williams will be 5th. Now, with those results, I'm trying to do a little bit of maths in my head. I actually think that Christian Menes has picked up P2 in the championship by a single point, if not 2, ahead of Chris Schmerecker, who might find himself P3 in the championship. Ken Copeland is a little bit further back in the end. In fact, he's a long way further back. He's out of the race. So, in fact, yeah, Ken Copeland not going to pick up any points. It will be Menes P2 in the championship after a great result tonight. In the end, though, results from the race saw 30 laps decide the victor, and it was Adam Brockway yet again for his 5th win in the 9-round season. Zach Hebert P2 in the race, P2 in the championship in the end ahead of Moben Khan, who was not able to unpick the lock and only lost out by 0.05 of a second. Eric Leroy and Edwin Onofra were 4th and 5th ahead of Faizan Sheikh and Carter James. Kwok Nyin, David Stevenson and JP Alfonso rounded out the top 10 for the final race of the season. Chris Massey was 11th on the lead lap ahead of the 3 non-finishers, Chad Nobles, Victor Couto and Miguel Vigo. Vigo not really getting through on the opening lap. Couto a bit of a victim from that big crash we saw out of the carousel. In the GT4s though, Mercedes dominant somewhat towards the front of the field. Garrett Mays and Aiden Young 1st and 2nd. Aiden Young wrapping up the title. It never really looked in doubt, but he made sure that he has secured it tonight. Christian Menes with the P3 does, I'm doing the maths in my head again, yes, get P2 in the championship. Arno Jonas with no points, Ken Copeland with no points, and he beat Chris Schmerecker, who was tied on points with coming into this race, but only by the 1 position. So Chris finishes 4th ahead of Ed Williams after his recovery drive after the spin on that one, finishes in 5th. Gabriel Gutierrez and Mike Gallant, Justin Bragg and Robert Schwenkler and Justin Welsh rounded out our top 10. They say that they're a lap down, or it says they're a lap down, but they just finished behind the overall race leader. Travis Pruitt was a lap down as well, ahead of Kurt Ham, 3 down, ahead of quite a few of the non-finishers in this race. Joseph Maley, Jeff Rosenberger, 8 and 10 down respectively. Kaelan Tobin, Michael Brooks and Ken Copeland all caught up in that big crash at the exit of the carousel. Now, they finished 15th through 17th. Joe Faroni, after his really good start, 18th. And Matthew Wykov in the Porsche, 19th to round off this season. Before we get a word with Aiden Young, because we're going to have a chat with him first. He's not quite here yet. I think we're going to have a quick chat with Adam Brockway in the meantime, but he's the champion. 5 wins on the season, 8 in total in his LMP3 PRL career. Adam Brockway, welcome in. I know we had a chat last week and you thought you had it done then. It was, pretty much done at that point, but you got it done now. How does it feel to be what could be the last LMP3 winner in the in the PRL for quite some time?
It's great. It's definitely bittersweet. I started in the PRL about 4 years ago. So I definitely have to, big shout out to everybody, in the organization. I definitely don't think I would be here today if it wasn't for PRL. So, it feels great, especially to win my first championships after many seasons and, potentially the last, season they're running for at least quite a while.
You've been so good in quite a lot of cars, quite frankly, here in the PRL. It's your 11th win in the history of the league in all machinery. Where does this rank? I know you said it's your first championship, but where does this rank in PRL moments for you? Because you've had a fair few.
This is definitely the top for sure. I started GT4 and then switched over to LMP, I think, right as that was released, and so many close, opportunities to take a championship. I think majority of the series I finished either 2nd or 3rd, but there was always an issue, where there was, self-induced mistake or, that was costing me. So, with the help of, all the guys at Muradness and, pushing and working with me, this season, I was just super consistent. I don't think the pace was all the way there, but the consistency in the racecraft was definitely there this season.
Yeah, and it really showed towards the back end, the consistency getting you towards the front. Not necessarily the qualifying pace in comparison to the likes of Mobin, but you got it done when it mattered. Another Brockway. You are the LMP3 champion this season. Congratulations. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and hopefully we get to speak to you soon in the PRL.
Yes, sir. Have a good night.
You too, Adam. Congratulations to Brockway after his title-winning evening. P2 in the LMP3s in the end went to a man who is going to end up grabbing P2 in the championship, and coming into this race in P5 made it feel like it may not be on, but with a couple of drivers not picking up the points that they could have done, Christian Menes is the driver who's managed to beat the rest and get himself into P2. Christian, welcome and congratulations. Really a good race for you in the GT4s. Of course, I'm getting myself mixed up. I'm getting ahead of myself. But in the GT4s, great evening for you. How does this reflect on your season as a whole?
Honestly, it's a great way to wrap up. The first couple rounds were definitely a roller coaster. Watkins Glen, decent result, and then the following two races after that, I had unfortunate luck and got in incidents in the first laps and ruined my race completely. So having to crawl back from there, make up for my mistakes, getting a podium in the final race and jumping into P2, which I honestly didn't think was possible. I'm really happy with it. It was an incredible series to run. This is my first time racing PRL, so to get vice championship and podiums along the way, it's the best case scenario.
It's been a really consistent season for you, generally. Where does this race reflect overall in the season? Because you've had, like you said, a few podiums, but this really was a confident drive tonight.
I was able to keep it consistent for most of the race. Aiden and Garrett did have a bit of pace on me, but I ran my own race. I almost had Aiden towards the end, but he said in the chat that he was fuel saving and missed his fuel calculations. So there's reasoning behind that, but I'm really happy with my performance, and huge congrats to Aiden for securing the championship.
Yeah, well, it's a fantastic way to round out your season. Congratulations, Christian, on the P2 in the championship, and hopefully we'll get to speak to you soon in the PRL.
Thank you very much.
Christian there in P2. Now, I did get ahead of myself. I will completely hold my hands up to that. I really wanted to drag in Zach Hebert, who finished in P2 in the LMP3s, but I was looking at the other P2 man. Both P2 drivers rounded up P2 in the championship, and that's where I got myself a little bit confused. But Zach joins us now. Another great result for you, Zach. Fantastic consistency throughout the season. The win a couple of weeks ago must be one of the top moments for you. But to get second place in the championship over the course of a really competitive season, you're lost with.
Yeah. Honestly, again, it's a real shame that PRL is finishing after this. This racing is by far some of the best I've experienced outside of its esports level. Real, and again, it depends on the series, but real clean, real respectful, hard, makes you want to become a better sim racer to compete and do stuff like this. I really thought the race was over lap 1 when Miguel got loose in T5. It gave me a little bit of damage, but luckily nothing too terrible to help us overcome. Fantastic racing by Mobin. Again, we're former teammates, so I know like how hard he pushes, but just great racing by him. But to end up P2 in a championship that kind of didn't start off great for me is kind of just a real good cap on my participation here on PRL. It's just been, I have no words to describe how much I'm going to miss this series once it's.
2 weeks ago must be a real highlight, but overall as the season is, do you feel like this is your best season in PRL?
Absolutely. Again, the consistency was there the last 2 seasons. Again, just being top 5, which again, I'm happy with. But again, it was always, trying to develop and get that little bit more, find that little more speed, that consistency. Again, I was kind of worried at the beginning of the season with how Watkins started, just kind of how the slow start for myself. But again, this is by far one of my best seasons. And again, with really good competition to push you to try and be that much better. But such stiff competition, and again, still have no words for how great the series is, how great the league is, and all that.
Yeah, well, in the end, a really good finish for you. We're going to miss the drum kit behind you, Zach, but we wish you all the best, and hope to be able to speak to you again in somewhat the near future.
All right, thank you guys so much.
Keep it there. Always a true giant and a great guy to chat to after a good race for him. We will come to the GT4 champion. I got a bit ahead of myself before, but we will get to Aiden Young now. He has been, dominant over the course of the season. Once again, I believe I'm right in saying, Aiden, your 4th title in a row. Where does this rank compared to the others? Because you have run away from the rest this season.
It's definitely up there for sure. Managing to have such a dominant season. I think I don't know what the gap was in the end. I think it was close to 60 points. That's my biggest margin ever in a championship season. So to be able to do that is pretty awesome, and it definitely feels good. But to get my first championship with the WSR Esports my butt kicker crew is even more special. They've done nothing but help me out. They've improved me as a driver. They've given me fantastic sets to use all season, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without them.
Yeah, and it's been a fantastic season for you overall. Looking forward, where do you kind of see yourself moving on to? I know you've been around a lot more in some top splits and some other championships as well. What's the confidence like after a few seasons in the PRL going into future endeavors?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
The question really was just where does the confidence lie going forward into the future, because you've been such a great part of PRL for a long time.
Well, we'll see. Depends on whenever PRL decides to come back, but I'll definitely be back here and try and go for a 5th. Hopefully some of the guys that I've had some good battles with in previous seasons decide to return, and then maybe Garrett decides to return and we have a Titanic of a championship battle. That would be fun. But yeah, if they come back and I'm able to go for a 5th, you can believe that you'll see me here.
We look forward to whenever that point is. Congratulations, though, once again, champion in the GT4s, and a great way to round off your PRL, at least for now. Well done.
Thank you.
Aiden Young there in the end, champion, but he did finish one position behind the eventual race winner in the GT4s, Garrett Mains. I'm sorry, Garrett, I think I've dragged you in mid-sentence there, but well done, another win for your season. You've not been here in every single race, but when you've turned it, you've been competitive. Where does this rank in terms of your 3 wins this season?
Man, honestly, I wish I turned the fan on before I started the race. That was a sweaty first 40 minutes. I felt like, I'd gotten back into the draft after an awful first lap. I don't really know what was going on there. I was throwing. The cold tires kind of caught me out, and having a little bit of contact in the first 2 corners did not help our case. Whether that was my fault or not, I haven't even gone back to watch. It's just I was kind of getting ping-ponged, I felt. But we clawed our way back into the draft, got back into a fighting position, and then a little bit of hard to judge LMP3 driving just made it to where I couldn't really hit any of my apexes for 4 straight corners. Lost a second, lost the draft, had to repeat the whole process. It was kind of demoralizing, to be honest with you, but was able to get back into the draft again, claw my way back up into the fight. Aiden and I were having a good battle. I hate that it ended the way it did. I felt like, if you're going to be defensive on entry, you can't be defensive on exit. And I think what he was saying to me is he parked the apex, and I guess when he got on the gas, he spun the tires. I'm not sure, but the whole time he's exiting the corner, he's counter steering and still coming to the left, which I'm as low as you could possibly be at that point. So with him not being able to power out because he's in the traction control and still coming over the left, it really left me nowhere to go. But, it's a shame. I felt like the first time I got by him, we had a little bit of contact, and I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. I felt like that was a pretty big lunge from him, but it's a shame we didn't get to duke it out to the finish, but it was a blast while it lasted.
You really did show your class towards the end and pulling away at the front. Garrett, congratulations again. 3 wins on this season. It's not necessarily a title-winning season for you, but definitely one to be proud of. Well done, and hopefully we get to speak to you soon in the PRL or elsewhere.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I gotta give a huge shout out to Wigan Water Technologies, and a big thank you to them for coming on board this season. Really cool to be able to close out the PRL era with a win. I was a little late to the game. I really wish I'd found this league sooner, but it was a blast while I was here, and happy to be able to get a 3rd win for them this season. Also got to give a thank you to Scott at MCU Body and Linux.
Always a great chant. Yeah, Garrett, congratulations on your win, and good luck for all the future.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Then rounding out our podium sitters there, Ron, I somehow managed to do that in a higgledy-piggledy order, but we got there in the end. A great way to end the season, some really great champions as well, and even for some of the drivers who weren't quite on the top step in terms of that championship, some very happy faces.
Yeah, some very happy faces and some happy tears, potentially. Bittersweet tears, I think I heard from some of those drivers. Ending off the PRL era as it stands currently. Some drivers ending it off with some wins, ending it off with some championships. I gotta say, from my personal perspective, I mentioned this earlier on the show, this is my first time being with the PRL. This is my first season with the PRL. I have absolutely loved every single second of being a part of the series, and it's my sincere hope that the PRL will be able to return at some point in the not too far off future, whether that be in a couple of seasons time, whether that be in a couple of years time. Darren and I are young guys. We're going to be hopefully doing this broadcasting stuff for a while, and fingers crossed we'll be able to come back.
Yeah, hopefully so. But it has been a pleasure all season long to be alongside you, Ron, up here in the commentary booth. Don't forget, guys, there's still more PRL action towards the rest of the week. But for Monday nights, that's a bit of a wrap, at least for the time being, here on RaceSpotTV. The LMP3 GT4 Challenge has proved to be one of the best over the last few seasons, particularly over the last year. We really thank all of you who've watched along, all of you who commented in the chat, who have been active as well, and we've got to thank the league for making this possible. Hugo Luis has been behind the cameras, myself, Darren Thacker, Ron Mourns behind the microphones as well. Thank you for watching tonight, and we'll hope to see you tomorrow night as the PRL continues in the GT3s, but for now, it's a goodbye.